Ladies and gentlemen, Clockwork Empires released revision 40 very recently, and I'm going to play through the first little bit and talk about all the cool new stuff. So let's get right into it. My name's Alfred. Now, Clockwork Empires is a game in early access, being actively developed by the good people at Gaslamp Games. Still have the choice of two starting biomes, although I hear more are in the pipes. Here's the jungle and versus the plains, each of which has unique, basically wildlife and basically agriculture, and the resulting produce will vary depending where you pick. To start, I'm going to start with New Antipodia, I guess. Been playing a lot of the jungle lately. The jungle is quite a lot harder than the plains, largely because of death realms. But I will get back to that. So what I like to do is I will spend the first episode, because these series tend to run maybe 4 or 5 episodes each time there's a new stable release. So the first episode will be me mostly talking about the new stuff, or stuff that's new since the previous stable release. And then I'll just play a little bit more, and people can get a feel for where the game is at, whether or not maybe they're comfortable purchasing it, or if not, whether you want to wait for it for full release. Personally, I've as you can see from these many videos I've made, I enjoy this game quite a lot, and I enjoy making these videos. And much to my surprise, people seem to enjoy watching them. So there you go. I'm not going to go over the tutorial because it would consist mainly of me reading text off the screen. So here we are. Starting location, 7 colonists in the grassy fields. First thing we need, materials to build buildings. So we'll drag a box around these trees. As usual, the first building I like to build is the carpentry workshop, and that's the building that turns planks, or produces planks, turns logs into planks. And that's pretty important because you need planks for pretty much everything. Get a door on this bad boy. 2 doors. All right. So I'm going to put in 2 workbenches. It's not a case of build a building and then it makes stuff. Inside a building, you need workbenches or modules for your colonists to work at. So one module typically accommodates 1 colonist. So if I want the carpentry to be able to take advantage of, or to be able to produce more than one thing at a time, I will want multiple modules for multiple colonists. Stockpile, important for centralizing your goods. That's where stuff gets stocked, so your crap isn't scattered all over the countryside, which means your colonists don't have to walk all over the countryside, picking up things for production. It doesn't sound like that big a deal because colonists they're smart enough to go grab things that they need, but the problem is that's a lot of walking time, and they don't walk very fast. So I'll let them get on with it. I think I'm going to gloss over the starting game. Not too much has changed in terms of pacing or starting game requirements. I think you can get, I don't think you need me telling you specifically what I'm doing here. So I'm going to build the carpentry, and then I suspect the second building I'll build is the kitchen. But I don't want to bog down my columns with too many jobs quite yet. And the reason I don't want to do that is because of the way the job system works. The more jobs you have in the list, the less progress each individual job will see. And this is because colonists attempt to complete all active jobs at once. So your very limited workforce, and if you look at the work crews here, I don't have a lot of colonists. Like, I have literally only 7 colonists. Each of these rows is a work crew, which can accommodate new workers. Right now I have 7 overseers and no workers. So the more people I have, the more confident I'll be in maybe having more than one ongoing project at a time. But that is not the case yet. Let's get a farm going. Let's put this farm over here. Something we can eat. Good old cabbage. Yeah, so new stuff. There's been a bunch of new stuff, and where to start? So, although this isn't new to this revision, I mean it's there've been a lot. Okay, the last couple of revisions have seen the introduction and then subsequently the expansion of sort of branching decision trees. Like you'll get a notification, oh, there are fishmen lurking at the borders of your colony. And then the game will say, how do you want to deal with them? You can say, deal with them peacefully, kill them on sight, or just tolerate them and, only shoo them away when they're breaking stuff. Each of those decisions leads to additional branches. Now that you're tolerating the Fishman presence, and for some godforsaken reason they're like stomping on your corn, you're then faced with the decision, okay, you've been tolerating them, but they're hurting your colony. How do you want to deal with this? Deal with this in an aggressive manner, or speak gently with them? And there are a bunch of those, so there have been more and more and more of those branches introduced with each subsequent patch. So that has seen great expansion with regards to dealing with your dealings with bandits and fishmen, and new to this revision, foreign powers. It was actually that particular foreign nationalities were introduced in one of the experimental branches between 39 and 40, but then they've seen some fleshing out for this revision. So, as an overseer of a colony, you are a representative of the Clockwork Empire, the Majesty of Cog and Queen, and that's a sort of alternate reality of Victorian England. The timeline, it's not really specific. I'd say, whatever, like mid-1800s. We have equivalent national powers that are sort of time appropriate. Now, so if I click on the factions button here, let's ignore these four on the left for now. Here we have the Clockwork Empire. One of the potential foreign powers is the Stahlmark, which is kind of Germany and kind of Prussia. We have the Novorus, which is, again, kind of Russia. And we have the République Mécanique, which is kind of France. So, as far as in-game implementation goes, you have foreign relations with them, and although it's a little bit rudimentary for now, I know there are plans to expand interactions with them. At present, each of these three factions is one of three states. So it's either hostile, neutral, or friendly toward you. And which state is which state, I shouldn't have used that word, which foreign faction is which state in their relationship with you is, as far as I can tell, determined at random. So one of them will be hostile, one of them will be friendly, and one of them will be neutral. So when they wander across the map, their disposition toward you will determine whether or not you fight, or they hang around and help defend your colony, or whatever. They just go on their way. I think if this playthrough goes on long enough, you'll get to see them. They're very cool. They have their own uniforms. They have their own music. Yeah. Let's concentrate on getting this colony up and running, though. I don't want to start on another workshop until this one is done. For one, I'm going to need the planks that the carpentry makes, but also I don't want to overload my colony with too many jobs. The way the job system works, every colonist will attempt to, or your colony as a whole will attempt to complete every job on the list. And so if you have a whole bunch of jobs, the basically every job suffers. The productivity, your colony suffers from ADHD, I guess. Give it too many things and it doesn't do any of them really well, which I guess might not be a problem when you're building buildings, except that it'll take forever to build them. But it's important for time-sensitive jobs like farming. Because if you don't tend your crops, or if nobody goes to tend a crop in a timely fashion, the crop will rot in the field. So for that reason, you want to leave the job levels at a level such that they can be completed in a timely fashion. But also, you don't want to queue them up, so slowly that you fall asleep while playing. So there's a nice balance, and of course, depends on your play style and how aggressively you like to expand, and maybe you want to make sure everyone has food and beds before you start making guns, but maybe you don't, right? Maybe you don't care, or maybe guns are more important to you because then you can hunt game, and you'll get more meals in that way. Speaking of meals, let's harvest these berries here. And these other berries over here. So, we've got the colony underway. Okay, new stuff. I've mentioned is the filthy foreigners. I guess, even though I'm not on the jungle biome, changes have been made to the deathworm. So the deathworm was this horrible toothy maggot creature the size of a large dog that would pursue your colonists and try and bite them to death, and it was fearless, and it was a scourge of many playthroughs, many Reversion 39 era playthroughs. They were so horrible, in fact, they saw 3 balance passes. If you want to see the effects of deathworms on gameplay, you can actually watch the first episode of my Revision 39 playthrough, where I struggle to form a coherent sentence because my colony is immediately set upon by multiple deathworms. So Balance Pass number 1 saw deathworm, basically the deathworm spawn rate. Basically when your colonists spawned, there would be deathworms there. So Balance Pass number 1 said, okay, we're going to tune the number of deathworms down. It was still problematic, so Balance Pass number 2 said saw deathworms pushed away from wherever it is your colony spawned, so they wouldn't immediately start mauling your colonists before you had a chance to build anything. That still wasn't enough. So the third and final deathworm Balance Pass was to remove deathworms from the map entirely. Yes, they're so horrible they're removed from the map during initial spawn and only appear in game now as determined by a script, which means they still spawn, but they just don't spawn under your feet immediately where you start. Yeah, but I still love deathworms, but I think those balance passes were sorely needed. That's all a bit of a moot point, of course, because deathworms do not spawn in the temperate biome, which is where I am right now. Let's pick some of these black mushrooms. Okay, the carpentry workshop, at least one, there we go. So we've got a workshop. Carpentry workshop will be able to produce planks. Let's get a work crew in here. So, this is a new thing. Now, when I mouse over the potential products of this workshop, it will tell me specifically the raw resource required and the number of finished resources excuse me, it will produce. In this case, 1 log becomes 2 planks. That used to be very, well, okay, hang on a second. Yeah, good enough. All right, 14 planks. This used to be variable, and the productivity of a workshop used to be, this would always need 1 log as an input, but then the number of planks it produced depended on the proficiency of the workshop's overseer. So, for example, let's take a look at Ezekiel Brazensolder here. He's got his skills here, things he is good and or bad at, and right now he's terrible at everything. But the way the hold that thought. So if we look at the bottom right here, Allied troops arrive. A unit of Allied Novorussian troops is going to be visiting our settlement. So I can tell immediately that the Novorus in this game will be my allies. Okay, gotta pause the game. Too much stuff going on. 3 criminals. Yep. Okay, so I've got 3 new recruits. Here are the Novorus. Look at their fine furry helmets. So, that alert tells me that they are my allies. They may hang around my settlement. At the very least, they will not fight my colonists and may in fact help defend my colony against whatever. Possibly beetles that'll burrow up out of the ground to ruin my crops, or ornery aurochs, or ravening fishmen, or Obeliskians, but I will get back to those later. But these guys are my pals, which means the 2 other factions are neutral and hostile, respectively. I don't know which is which because they haven't spawned in yet. I believe they're... Where do they come from? Well, they're walking toward my colony. Here is Shelby Woodworth, my NCO. I don't know what he's doing. Just wandering off. That's fine. So, the other thing I went through very quickly was, oh, what's going on here? He's shooting at dodos. Ah, dodos in the underbrush. We're having a bird for dinner tonight. Oh, look at all these, snap up these mushrooms. There's a black fungus. So the Novorus have arrived. And, I believe at this point they're just going to hang around and protect my colony for a little bit. They don't hang around forever. Okay, as I was saying, proficiencies. As someone does something, they'll get better at it. So Aubrey Mind Widow is in the crew that I've assigned here. Also Smugly Badger. Oh, that's a great name. So these guys are making planks, right? I said turn 7 logs into as many planks as that will make, which is 14. The output used to be variable. As the overseer got better at carpentry, one log would make more than 2 planks. That's no longer the case. So this output is always fixed now, but increasing skill, an overseer's increasing skill means that he will produce, that job will be completed faster. So the better he is at something, again, the higher the output will be, but because he completes the assignment faster rather than producing more, which I think is a good change. It makes the output predictable, but just, faster. So we can see he's turned some of our logs into planks. And now that, how are we doing for food, actually? Okay, we've got a fair amount of raw food. So the second building I'm going to build, kitchen. By the way, these could be any arbitrary shape. They don't have to be boring rectangles, but they can be, if you prefer your buildings that way. But that's because you are bad and you should feel bad. So every building has modules, and workshops need modules to do their jobs. In this case, kitchen will need ovens and workbenches. I should mention the spice rack and the hanging pots are purely decorative, so I'm not going to build those for now. This has changed a little bit as well. Okay, better pause here. So, it used to be immigration was give me 3 random dudes. This has been changed a little bit. I'll just take the usual number. If I want to receive no colonists, that will actually cost me prestige. Prestige is sort of a meta resource that you accumulate. You accumulate prestige at a rate of 1 a day. And then you also receive prestige for doing things that are favorable toward the aims of the Empire. So running a colony efficiently, or behaving honorably toward your enemies, and opportunities for that pop up all through the game, through the branching decision tree. but it's essentially the currency of the game. I'm just say send the usual number, which is 2 immigrants. Yes, so that's also seen small tweaking. Now, immigrants used to queue up in the unassigned laborer row up at the top of the work crew here. Now they're automatically assigned to crews, and the game will try to assign them to crews evenly until every crew has the same number. Immigrants who are soldiers will be automatically assigned under an NCO into a military unit. In this case, I got 1 laborer and 1 overseer. So Mrs. Bronze Whistle's crew is down here, and whoever it was, I guess it was Amon Brazenton, got assigned to this crew here. These buttons are the job filters, what sort of jobs this crew is allowed to do. Default setting is once you assign a crew to a workshop, every one of these buttons gets turned off, so they will only do their workshop jobs. I like to turn most of them back on, actually, because most of the time they're not busy at their workshop 24/7, so I like having them free to do the spontaneous jobs, like hauling things and farming. Anyway, let's get some modules in this kitchen. So I've got the cheapy stone oven and the more expensive iron oven. The iron oven cooks faster. The stone oven is much cheaper to build. So early in the game, you might want to build a stone oven. I like to build iron ovens, though, because starting the game, you have the resources for a couple of them, and being able to produce food quickly is quite important. Quite important to the health of your colony for a couple of reasons. First of all, your colonists like to eat, of course. And they like to eat cooked food. So they'll eat raw food as a last resort, but it will make them unhappy. If you can give them cooked food, it will keep them happier. But also, cooking food essentially doubles the food available. At least doubles. Like, and I'm changing the stockpile filters here. These filters determine what a stockpile is able to store or not store. And so what I generally like to do, let's clear up this grass here. I like to, once I have a kitchen going, I like to make a filter that says the stockpile closest to the kitchen only accepts food, and no other stockpile can accept food. So every cooked or uncooked meal goes into this one, and then I can see at a glance how much food my colony has, which is useful information, I feel. Because I can look at a glance and say, oh my god, we're running out of sausages, better go find some mushrooms in the wild, or spend prestige to purchase, or beg for supplies from the Empire. Not so much now, but early in the game's iterations, starvation was like an immediate and pressing problem. I think by now it's a little bit more balanced, and it's harder to starve your colony to death, but I still like to have lots of food on hand. So we've been collecting these bushels of black-cap fungus from the wilderness, and part of our starting supplies from the Empire was this bushel of sausages. And we can see the stacking mechanics at work. So the last couple of revisions saw the ability to stack like resources. Right? You can see this guy here stacking logs into more logs. This makes a stack of logs. This one actually has 7. It's kind of relaxing, actually. It's like watching a hard drive defragment itself. Yeah, okay, I realize not everyone may appreciate the beauty of watching clusters. Okay, let's knock it off on a nerdy tangent here. So, kitchen's underway. Carpentry is built. So you see the order the order I ordered earlier has been completed, and so the crew that's assigned to the workshop is free to do other stuff because there are no jobs pending in here. So one of these guys might be tending the cabbage crop or helping assemble this kitchen. The kitchen has all the logs it needs, but it needs stone. And I don't have any stone in my commodities. Uh-oh. I should probably have started mining this stone earlier. Well, let's do that now. So, I'm cutting this episode off here. Actually, what I've gone and done in post is to cut my first session into 2 halves because it went on way too long. So if you've enjoyed watching this episode, part 2 should be up immediately. I think I'm just going to end up posting them up together. Again, though, this was version 40, which is the latest revision of Clockwork Empires, a game available in early access on Steam and through the developers Gaslamp Games. My name is Alfred. I hope you've enjoyed watching these because I enjoy making them. Oh, have a nice one.